All right. Let's see how this goes. How's it going? Streaming on YouTube today. I don't usually do that, so I'm just kind of curious to see how it works. I forgot to change my category. It says science and technology. I guess that's fine. Yeah, usually I stream on Twitch. Just random stuff like video editing and such. But today I'm going to look at camera stuff. So we'll see how that goes. B&H is nice because you can sort by newest. That way you can see what's recently announced or released. So I did notice quite a few video cameras show up recently, but there's probably some other stuff that I've missed, like this. I have some thoughts on that for sure. But yeah. Okay, I've got both chat room things up. I don't have much viewership on Twitch, but I like streaming there because it's kind of my old stomping ground for live streaming stuff. I used to stream a little bit back in 2014. Games and such. Switch here for a second. Oops. Oh, that is not working. It's already broken. Why is that not working? I changed the... Oh, I changed the name of the scene. Which one was it? This one. Alright, that should work. Anyways. Gotta expand this a little bit. I was using the studio mode of OBS recently. It's pretty nice, but I don't need it at the moment. It basically puts a buffer with your scenes so you can have a staging area like the professional video stuff, and then you can push that to the live view, which is cool. But at the moment, I don't think I need that. Anyways, we've got recent digital camera stuff, as well as the video focused equipment. So we've got the ZR, which I had commented on a few videos and I've had some interesting feedback on those. Obviously, all the larger YouTubers, Gerald, Petapixel, I always kind of confuse, or at least for a long time, I confused the name of that company. Like, I don't even want to say it, but it's Petapixel. So peta is like petabyte. Anyways, I'm trying to think of which other ones. I saw a Potato Jazz video, as well as Brandon Washington. He did a great job on that, talking about features, and he's very video focused, so it was nice seeing his opinion on it. And he uses RED cameras, so he has a better perspective of what they added to the camera. But I think I'm going to start with this one. Or I could just look at the lenses for a second. I'm looking at the chat, or at least trying to. It's way over on the second screen, but I will attempt to look at it. Make sure that's working. That view is very close to my face. Anyways. Should be good. Lenses. Micro Four Thirds. I do wonder how used or how popular Micro Four Thirds still is. That is not a cheap lens. It looks cool. 50 to 200, 2.8 IS Pro. So Ohm Systems is actually making something and making something. I don't know if it's truly new. It's probably like a revision but maybe it is new. 50 to 200, so it's relatively wide for this style of lens. I mean, it looks nice. I don't think I've ever used a Micro Four Thirds camera, but I do. I was tempted to get a used Olympus EM1 Mark II at one point, but I didn't do it because it had phase detect autofocus. It looked pretty decent for vlogging and stuff because of their stabilization system. But yeah, so that's cool. Canon's got a 85mm f1.4 VCM. That's the motor type. I'm pretty sure VCM. $1,700. It's flipping price increases, man. Although, I guess it's a 1.4, so I guess it's more expensive in general. I think I need to adjust this so that the YouTube chat is on the more easy to see part of the screen. There we go. Sigma. So that's one of my frustrations as well, is that Sigma full frame is not on Nikon. I say Nikon. People, and I'm in the United States, but people in the United States say Nikon. And the technical pronunciation, if you're in Japan, is Nikon. It's 3 syllables. And I don't know, they probably write it in katakana, but Nikon. Anyways, I really wish that Sigma full frame was on Nikon mount. $1,600 for 35 1.2. I do convention photography. Actually, I just released a video on that. I have a queue of a few conventions that I need to edit. Let me pull up the YouTube video. Actually, I'll use a unlogged in browser. Well, that's probably a bad idea. I'll use a logged in browser. I'm always concerned about, because I have ads, or this channel is in the partner program, so a little concerned about watching my own videos with the ads on there. You can skip most of them, which is good, but my thumbnail for this video is not amazing. I have 3 different thumbnails in there, but they're all just frames from the GoPro video. Anyways, that's available if you're interested. That was a fun convention. I didn't actually go to the convention itself. I just walked around the hotel and the arcade, which is really nice there. Took some photos of cosplayers. I was using the Z5 and the 40mm f2 lens as usual with these videos lately. It's a decent combination. It works pretty well. I mean, autofocus wise, it's not amazing or anything, but it's functional with how I have it set up. So that is a Sonic cosplayer, which is cool. Anyways, I think this lens would be an amazing option for that. I'm using the 40 f2, but this is a 35 1.2. Just the larger aperture if you want to use it, stuff like that. But it's on L mount and E mount, or at least it will be. I do have some Sony E mount cameras now, but none of them are relatively like super recent. I have the ZV-E10, but I use that for video mostly, obviously. This is the A6000 here, and then I have a A7S original, which it's fine for photos, but it's old, and It doesn't have a touchscreen. It's generally not as pleasant to use for photography as the Z5. So anyways, that looks like a really nice lens. 1,549 USD. Seems reasonable-ish these days for this lens with that large of an aperture. But I'm going to assume that it's very nice quality-wise. So it has dust and splash resistance. Looks good. 11 aperture blades. That's probably decent. I think usually they start at like 9. So 11 should be a little bit more of a rounder background point source light look. Let's see what else. 20 to 200, 3.5 to 6.3. It's a very large range. So quality-wise, I don't know how... Well, is this an APS-C lens? Why does it look so small? Maybe it's much big. Oh my goodness. It's a large boy. Maybe it's just weird in the photo. Okay, there's the size comparison. So this is their BF. This is a full frame camera, which is relatively small, but it's not tiny. So yeah, that's a big lens. Must be full frame. I mean, the range is interesting. 200 millimeter at 6.3 isn't like the worst thing ever. I think those Canon, what are those things called? I think it was it a 300 or F11, something like that? Or maybe it's a 500. Help me out here. Whoops. Okay, it's a something lens. What is not it? Okay, this one, 800. They have a shorter one as well. It's $1,100 now. It's a used one. I do wonder if used pricing is increasing as the price of new increases. Oh, because it's a 600 millimeter. Okay. I've never used these. I mean, I just haven't used much equipment in general these days, but these were interesting when they came out. Because it relies on the higher ISO performance of mirrorless, or just, I mean, DSLRs too, but this is a mirrorless lens. But yeah, that's a look. I mean, F11, I would prefer this at 6.3, but that's only 200 millimeters. Yeah, that's a very different lens. For 600 something, it looks kind of interesting. Anyways, $1,000 for this. Again, L mount, E mount. They really need to get on Nikon, but I would assume Nikon themselves are the ones being jerks about it, because Sigma would probably be on there if they could. They do have APS-C lenses on there, I'm pretty sure. Probably like the 16 millimeter and stuff. Let's see. Yeah. So they have some APS-C stuff, but no full frame. That's on pretty much everything. Canon RF, Fujifilm, Leica L. Are there even APS-C cameras in this mount? Maybe some old ones? That's interesting. Oh, it's cheaper. 489, 509. How much is this one? Oh, that's 489. The Z Premium. Maybe it's newer. I had this one for a while. The EFM mount one. It's pretty nice. I don't think I use it as much as I thought I would have used it. But in general, Sigma glass is nice. Whoops, what am I doing? Let's see what else I have. 135mm f1.4. That is a chunker. Looking at the price of this one versus the price of this. The 35 1.2. This feels like a value. But maybe it's just the focal length is a specialty one in a way. Once you get to the larger apertures on this, at least in the DSLR days, they got really, really expensive. So the price of this one doesn't look terrible for what it is. But that is a cool lens. 13 bladed aperture. Yeah. Minimum focusing distance 43.4 inches. I don't know what that is in not American units. $56 1.2 for 580 Viltrox. Viltrox hasn't contacted me much in the for a long time now. I'm trying to think what the last thing that I looked at from them was. Probably a light. And they haven't sent me. Oh no, it was a lens. They sent me the pancake lens for Sony E-mount. It's a 20mm 4.5, something like that. I still have it. Pull that out. It's a tiny little thing. It's pretty cool. My gripe with this lens is the minimum focus distance and reproduction ratio. I wish I could focus closer with this because I would use it so much more if I could. But it is still pretty cool. Very unique. Thin lens. It has autofocus, obviously. It does not have a manual focus ring. That's another gripe that I have. But trade-offs for size, basically. Still pretty cool. Switch back to that. So 56mm 1.2. This is APS-C lens. I'm kind of curious which mounts they have this on. Okay, Fujifilm X, Sony E. So I could technically, I'm not gonna buy it, but if they had sent me one, I would. I have cameras for this. And that's the FX30. Not bad. Aster Hori, they've sent me some stuff in the past. 6mm 2.8 fisheye. It's a full frame lens. Kind of curious what the photos would look from this thing. No example photos. Oh man. It probably looks like a security camera. Where there's a black border around it in the resulting photos. Which has its uses, but it's a very, very specific look. But for $300, just to mess around with it, might be kind of fun. $24mm f or 24 to 70 2.8 version 2. Yeah, I think they made this smaller and lighter, which is good for most people, but they probably made it optically worse. Who knows? There's Petapixel did a video on this one, I think. Man, lenses are expensive. $2,800. But if you do professional work, it might make sense to get this one over the version 1 for the size. But yeah, I mean, if you have a version 1, there's probably very little reason to swap it. Has a focus limiter. Yeah, it looks nice. That is outside of my ability to purchase. Mitacon 55 2.8. Oh, I think I have. This is probably manual. I think I forgot to check the autofocus box. It's the macro lens. For macro specifically, no autofocus is fine. Actually, Aster Hori, or however you pronounce it, they had sent me a macro lens for Sony. Fully manual. I still have it. Did a video or two about it. But it's kind of a weird mix because it doesn't really cover full frame, but it kind of covers full frame depending on where you're focused. So it's a little bit different. I don't know how to pronounce this one. Makey 24 1.4 autofocus. Yeah, that looks nice. APS-C 12mm 1.4. $630. Anyways, I'm gonna look at the cameras now. There's a fair amount of I had seen this one way back. So that's good on that. Kodak keychain digital camera. Random style blind box. Is this a functional thing? That'd be a good background piece. Okay, it's just a box. Can't really look at the actual camera, I guess. $30 for... It has a sensor in it. Okay, this is pretty cool. If it's an actual functional camera. Micro SD card slot. 1/4 inch sensor. I'm kind of tempted to get one. But you won't know which one you get. Man, these flipping blind boxes are such a scam. But I get it. If you're into conventions and just like the general anime pop culture stuff, the blind box things are so popular right now. So it's kind of funny seeing it in the camera world. But I am tempted to get one of these at some point. So we've got... maybe there is a... What was the name of it? Whoops. Kodak Chart. Man, I'm not good at pronouncing words. Charmira? Chimera? Is it Chimera? Something like that. It's on Amazon potentially. Trying to look at something that would have actual photos of the cameras. Okay, that's pretty shiny. So they got a blue one. Has a screen on it. I like this idea. This is neat. Image quality is interesting. I wonder if you have to have that in there. You know what? I like this. This is great. Wait. Oh, you can buy a batch of, you can buy 6 of them for $180. Huh. I wonder if local stores will get this. If they do, I might pick one up. Those are cool. I like the idea. All right, so this this is crazy to me. I get it why it's happening, but this is an old refreshed camera, and they increased the price a significant amount. But the thing is, they didn't really change much, and they made it kind of worse. This is not one of the cameras that I had reviewed back when my local camera shop existed. I reviewed the 180 of this era of camera. So this one is, I guess, slightly better. But they re-released it. However, I don't think it was like completely gone at any point. Oh, that's so odd looking. Anyways, there's a big fad right now of older style digital cameras. So I think it's good, and digicams have a place, right? I feel like they're always going to have a place because it's nice to have a dedicated camera. A phone is great, and I use a phone a lot for photo, like snapshot photos. But this is kind of a fun addition. The problem is that camera companies just don't give a crap, and they have never or very rarely produced anything vaguely recent technology, right? As far as I know, I don't think there are any new cameras of this style with a very new sensor or whatever, and processing technology and stuff like that. So that doesn't make any sense to me why they don't give a crap so much. But I guess that's just how it's going to be. So this is an old camera. And then I'm trying to remember what they did to it. They left the mini USB port, which it probably is not going to show in the photos. But based on what I had read, it has mini USB, which is before micro, and obviously USB-C. They should have put USB-C in this thing, which is crazy to me, considering how much money they're asking for it. It doesn't even have photos of it, but it has mini USB, as far as I know. Let's look at the specifications. "1080p video, 30 frames a second," which is functional. I mean, I wouldn't criticize it that much, not including the price on it for 1080p. Because with a small sensor like that, having 4K is probably not going to make any difference, honestly. So 1080p is fine. Oh, they swapped the standard SD to micro SD, which is generally fine. But why? In this case, I'm not sure. Does it even say? It doesn't even say the USB port specification. Let's see. It's got to be in here somewhere. Video capture. Micro HDMI. Okay, yeah, mini USB version USB 2. So that is just goofy to me that they would not change that and then charge 380 USD for this thing. There's a reason. In the anime convention scene world, or whatever you want to call it, like pop culture world, there's those Labubu things. This is kind of the camera world's Labubu right now, these cameras. And the thing is, this one's not really going to give people that much of the retro look, because I kind of equate that stuff to CCD sensors, and this is a CMOS sensor. So they didn't even refresh a CCD sensor camera. It's a more recent-ish CMOS. It'll probably still look not amazing. So maybe people will still get the look that they're trying to get in the feel or the use of it. But yeah. If this thing were $100, maybe $150, I'd be like, awesome. But not $380. Okay. So the ZF apparently got new colors or something. Or something. I'm honestly not too sure what happened here, but it's a cool camera if you're into retro stuff. Okay, so they got a silver and mauve pink, MAUVE, cognac brown, stone gray, teal blue, moss green. So there's an anime called Shinesman, and one of the it's a play on Power Rangers. And there's a character, the names of their colors are like sepia, moss green or whatever, and salmon pink, and the names of these cameras remind me of it's a parody of Power Rangers and Super Sentai. It's a tiny little series. It's worth checking out if you're into anime. I think it's 2 episodes, something like that. And there is, of course, a manga related to it. But I haven't read the manga, so I'm not sure what's in there. Anyways, the color names remind me of that anime. I could pull up a quick example. So that's what it looks like. He's like moss green, gray, something, salmon pink, and then he's like mustard yellow or some goofy name. I'm not sure if it's partly translation, but it's a parody, so whatever was in the actual Japanese language. Anyways, that is cool if you like interesting colors on your camera. I guess it's a good way for Nikon to appeal to more people. See what the pink one looks like. Yeah. Very nice. I like orange. So that's one of the originals though. Let's see, they had gray, cognac brown. Slightly different than the orange one. Interesting. Teal blue. Yeah, that's not bad. All right, what else do we have here? So I think most of the recent announcements and such are video focus cameras, which I'll take a look at pretty soon here. Pixel Pro C1. No picture, and it's cheap. Let's see if we can figure out what this is. Oh, wow. So this is again playing on the recent enthusiasm of digicams. Clearly it looks like it's a smartphone boxed in a camera shell. Smartphone sensor, I should say, with smartphone lens. Which is potentially fine. Okay, it's got a flip up screen. Wow. How's it going? Should you buy Lumix with Micro Four Thirds sensor? I've never used a Micro Four Thirds camera, but if you're interested in a specific one, they generally have good stabilization and things like that. I don't know, is it a full stop of light that you will potentially lose compared to APS-C? But if you don't care about that and the camera does what you want, I don't see any reason not to. So, yeah. Is there a specific one that we can look at? Or is it just like a used one that you had seen? You'll have a huge amount of lens options, assuming it's accessible in your region, of probably a mix of used and new equipment. There was a recent Micro Four Thirds lens that I had looked at earlier in the stream, but it's thousands of dollars, so we could take a quick browse of Micro Four Thirds lenses. I generally like the system. It's just not something that I've personally gotten into. Yeah, so if we sort by newest, the most recent announcement is almost $4,000 for this lens. So they're still producing equipment, clearly, for it. So it's a 50 to 200. It's an interesting range, f2.8. So the aperture here isn't reflecting the smaller sensor size compared to APS-C in full frame, but you're getting f2.8 for that. Let me do autofocus. So right now on B&H, there's 100 autofocus Micro Four Thirds lenses that are new, which is lower probably than the other mounts now. So is it super relevant in 2025? Probably still, but I think I would assume that the market is shrinking for this equipment. But you can be one of the people that get into it and make it more relevant if you're interested in it. So this is a old, maybe it's a revision of a kit lens. 12, so basically you look at, if you're trying to understand equivalent field of view and stuff, I just double the number. So a 24 to 400 in the idea of a full frame camera. That's kind of what it would look like for me because I'm more used to full frame. I don't think you're going to get like super, super wide lenses on this format. Considering the smaller sensor, it's a little bit more difficult to do that optically. So 12, like 10 millimeters or 12 millimeters on the wide end is kind of where you might see it. Maybe 8 millimeters, depending. There's a 40 to 150, so that's 80 to 300. And then looking at the aperture range, considering the smaller sensor, yeah. Buy Lumix, nice. For your vlog, yeah, that's probably a good option. Consider that only the most recent Lumix cameras have phase detect on the sensor. So if you buy an older Lumix, like a G7 or something, it's going to be contrast-based autofocus, which won't be ideal for vlogging and stuff. I would assume you can make it work, but it's really going to depend. So, don't know which recent Lumix cameras have phase detect, and they're probably pretty expensive, honestly, for like the G9 or whatever. Let me see. Whoops. I don't think that this has a way to separate cameras by focus type. Is there a mount? Sensor size, that should be good. So there's 104 Micro Four Thirds cameras. Let's see. One of the cameras I had mentioned earlier in the stream that I thought would be interesting for vlogging is the Olympus OM Systems now. The EM1 Mark II that has phase detect on the sensor, and you can probably find a used one for a decentish price. So if we go to this website, they sell used equipment. Also KH does as well. Whoops. EM1 Mark II. So I feel like this would be an interesting option for vlogging. It's around, well, under 700 USD, depending on where you are. You know, prices will be different. But yeah, I would personally consider something like this. Look at the specs and make sure it does what you want. I don't know if it has any recording time limits on this one. It probably does. So it probably has a 30-minute time limit for each clip. That's usually the case of cameras of a certain era until they basically removed it from most recent cameras. But this has great stabilization. It has phase detect on the sensor for autofocus. And I think it has a fully articulating screen. So this could be has a fully articulating screen. Could be an interesting option. Now, if you specifically want Panasonic for some reason, I don't know, just kind of make sure it's going to do what you want. So let me see what recent Panasonic cameras they have. So the G97 is the cheapest Lumix. I don't know anything about this one. If we look at the specifications, it still has a micro HDMI port. Oh, I mean, USB-C, so that's good. I don't see any mention of what type of sensor it is for autofocus. Oh, yeah. So this camera is contrast-based autofocus only. So this would not be ideal. Never used Olympus, but it's interesting. Yeah. So I would personally not buy something like this, for example, for vlogging specifically. You can make it work. It's not like you can't make it work, but it's what would be ideal for that use case. So I'm pretty sure only the most recent Panasonic have that phase detect, sadly. So the G92, for example, would have it. Yeah, you can make it work. Yeah. The thing is with contrast-based autofocus is that it's going to jump back and forth a tiny little bit as it's just focusing on one single object continuously. So you can see in the background of videos like that. I can pull up my frame here. This camera has phase detect. It's a Sony a6000, and it's focusing, but it's with the contrast-based autofocus systems, you would see a jitteriness in the background especially if you have lights in the background, stuff like that. Oh, you hate your old XT100. Is that a Fujifilm camera? So that's potentially the issue with contrast-based autofocus systems with video, is that you'll get this weird jitteriness as it flutters back and forth just functioning as it does naturally. So that's the potential issue. But with cameras like this is an old A6000 from Sony. It doesn't do that because it has the technology to avoid that. So cameras like this would be good, I think. So if we look at the specifications, yeah, so for example, this G9 II has phase detect autofocus. Anyways, I was looking at this weird Kodak camera. This is, again, trying to... Oh, they have an EM dash in here. I wonder if this was made with AI. In the photography world, this fad is interesting. So it's a 26mm equivalent field of view lens. Different colors. Honestly, I wouldn't mind trying this thing just to see if it's fun to use. But image quality and stuff like that's not going to be amazing. F2 lens on there. 26mm equivalent field of view. Digital zoom, oh boy. Yeah, not... I kind of... That picture is not from that camera. That's funny. Or at least I highly, highly doubt these pictures are from that camera. Who knows, maybe. It is f2 lens. If you get close enough. But that's kind of cool. Yeah. If you're into photography. I had looked at these a little bit ago too as well. It's a blind box, so basically you buy the box and you get one of these cameras. And it's a tiny little, super tiny little digital camera. It has a sensor inside. It actually does video, surprisingly. Micro SD card slot. So those are kind of cool. For $30, I might get one of these at some point if I can find one locally. So besides that, let's see what else new. Okay, this is a similar camera where it's just kind of like an old film point and shoot one-time use camera. No screen basically except for photo counter. LED flash, that's probably not going to be super functional. Those type of LED light things. So this appears to be a version 2 of this camera. I had seen a bunch of videos on this and people were mixed of whether it was good or not. It seems a little expensive for what it is. I'd rather get the other one with a screen on it. But I do understand what people are trying to do with this. Hasselblad medium format for $7,399. Yeah. Oh, I don't think I ever did a video on the GR4. Just talking about it. I like the idea of this camera. I would like to get one someday. They increased the price of it by a significant amount compared to the previous version. Obviously, in the United States, we have a difficult economic situation with foreign products. So maybe that's part of it. But $1,500 now for a GR camera. It's basically a point and shoot of a higher quality. Has an APS-C sensor inside. f2.8 lens. The field of view equivalent is 28mm for this version. They do have a 40mm version, but they haven't made it in or announced it in this new camera. So that'll come at some point, most likely. But this is the 28mm original version that's coming out. And I'm sure it'll be popular. The interesting thing is that they added a fair amount of internal memory in it. I think it's 50 something gigabytes, which is nice to have in addition to a micro SD card slot. So they went from standard SD to micro, which I think is fine. I don't think it's a huge issue. But the weird thing to me is that with that internal storage and the micro SD, you can't duplicate, you can't have an instant backup. And a lot of companies are still doing this, and it doesn't make any sense to me. When you have 2 card slots, or you have the ability to have internal memory plus a memory card, I personally really like having backups of photos. Like you're saying, I still restored your Canon AE1. Very difficult to find parts in Indonesia. Yeah, I imagine. That's awesome, though. Nice. Let's take a look when it was produced. So released in 1976, and they ended production in 1984. I'm pretty old, but I would have been alive when it ended production, so that's cool. Nice. Yeah, that's got that classic look to it. This actually looks a little bit like the Nikon ZF that was, it's been out for a while now, but has a kind of similar look. Very cool. Oh, the black one's nice. Yeah. The breech lock lenses. I've had a few of these breech lock lenses. They're a little confusing to put on, or at least put on the adapter in my case. I don't know if I currently have one. Probably not. I prefer the M42 mount, screw mount. So for example, where's my OBS? This is Super Lenitar 35 2.8 on an adapter. So this is a screw mount. M42 was mostly used with Pentax. They're whatever film era cameras. It's pretty convenient to use. I mean, it's not amazingly ideal because it can sometimes loosen with the screw mount. It doesn't lock. It doesn't like technically lock down. It does get in there tight enough that it won't easily come undone, but sometimes if the focus ring is a little tight, it might loosen. So I still like these though. This is an official Pentax 135. Putting lens on that camera can make you mad. Yeah, the breech lock stuff is interesting design. So this is another screw mount lens. M42. And this is 135 3.5 official Pentax. Well, Asahi is what they were called at the time. Super Takamar. They have a filter on there, so it might be kind of hard to see the text. But this one's kind of fun. And these are still relatively, at least at the time that I bought it, it was relatively cheap. Because it's the aperture at 3.5. And this one is a Nikon F mount, but film era. I think it's a 51.8 Series E. It's pretty nice. So with the advent of mirrorless cameras and focus assist, I think it's really fun to use these older lenses on mirrorless cameras. But if obviously in the case of you can use it on a film camera. At least all of the breech mount stuff. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Close that down. Anyways, I think the GR is a fun, interesting option for people that want to point and shoot, walk around, point and shoot. It's obviously not cheap. It's very expensive for what it is, but you get the quality out of it, which is great. Yeah, I would like to use one or buy one at someday. Again, sadly, they don't let you do instant backup in the camera with the internal storage and the micro SD. Hopefully in firmware they can add that, but who knows, there might be some technical limitation of the hardware. But I'm very much into backup when I can. I have a Z5 as my main photo camera, and I always, well, not always, but very, very often, I just have the 2 memory cards in the camera and have it set up to back up to the second card. So this says new release A6700. Maybe it's a new lens with it as a kit. ZV-10. Okay, so what's probably happening here? I have this sorted by newest. It's probably a new kit lens, so they just rehashed the package. And these are older cameras. Thanks for your time. Yeah, no problem. Awesome. Thanks for stopping by. So we got a R6 II with a cropping guide firmware. So this is like a specialty camera. I think I had seen an article about this, and it relates to photo studios and stuff that for whatever reason they wanted a digital guide in the camera. That's very niche. So it doesn't look like there's any specific... Oh, I don't think I covered this camera either. The Sony RX1R3. So this is a fixed lens, full frame camera. And they finally produced a new version of it, but I don't know if it's like amazingly different than the original. But the probably has a new processing engine, which is good. But I don't think they changed the lens at all, which is kind of odd that they wouldn't improve on that aspect of it. It's cool. I think this would be nice for the stuff that I do with conventions again, but the size in this case is big enough that it's not really pocketable. So it's cool. It's interesting, but it's like, do you really want to spend that much money for something that's small, but it's not small to the point that it's going to make a difference a lot of the time? I'm not sure, like, the appeal to that. Yeah. I think they increased, yeah, $5,000 for that thing. That is a lot. Is it really worth $5,000? As a viewfinder, it's tiny. Hmm. 61 megapixel, 35 f2 lens. The viewfinder is very low resolution. It's kind of like old school quality. 2.36 million dot EVF. It has one memory card port. I know it's competing with that Leica, which is expensive as well, so I get it, but single card slot, they couldn't even put like the small micro in there as well that some companies have been doing. They couldn't have put internal storage. Which camera should you buy for video and photo? That's a difficult question. Like what are your options in your region? Canon, Nikon, Sony. I feel like it could go. It depends on what you want to do with the photo and video. So, for example, Canon R50. This is a relatively, and it's still expensive to me, but it's on the scale of cameras. It's a lower cost option. Oh, you have a A6400. What about that camera do you not like or makes it less good? Oh, I see another chat. Leica Q is cooler, but the same price as that Sony. Yeah. Leica Q. Okay. Yeah, it's similar. Q3. Maybe there's a original Q. Okay, so one person is saying you want to buy the A7 IV or the FX30. Yeah, those are vastly different in function. I don't think the FX30 has a mechanical shutter. So if you want to do photography with this, it'll function, but you could run into limitations. I don't know if this has a mechanical. No, it doesn't. So specifically for if you do want to do photography, know which type of photography you want to do. And if it's, for example, flash related stuff, this probably is not the way to go. So another person is saying you have a Sony A7R IV, which is the same sensor as the R1 III. Fantastic stills camera. Yeah, 61 megapixel. Something like that. I had used the A7R V. My friend bought one. A lot of detail. Although the lenses that he bought weren't necessarily doing the sensor justice. I think it was the 85 1.8 that he bought, and then 28 1.8, something like that. The 85 had a lot of chromatic aberration, but maybe it's just enhanced by the megapixels. So another person saying I wanted more for vlogging, only pictures for you and your family. Okay. Yeah. I mean, this, if you've ever seen one of these in person, it's pretty substantial camera. It's pretty large, but more for cinematic videos. Yeah. I do like about this camera is that it has the combination card slot setup. So instant backup for video and stuff is great. You can do SD or you can do the CF Express Type A. Yeah, you like the design. It is cool looking. Let's see if they show the cards. Full-size HDMI port. It's nice. Just got 2 USB ports. Okay, there's the card setup. So this is a very nice pro level bit of functionality is that card setup. Although these CF Express cards are very expensive, most likely. So you can just use standard SD if there are certain formats that you don't care to use. The standard SD cards would be fine, most likely. Yeah, it's a cool camera. I mean, it really depends. It'll function with photos. It just won't be ideal in all situations. It's not a cheap camera either. Okay, you're saying insane detail. Got a 24-70 2.8 G Master. Nice. Let's see. Just so everyone knows that I'm doing multi-streaming, so I'm looking at 2 different chats. All right. Yeah. Obviously, this is not going to be good enough for you. Oh, FX3. I mean, if you want full frame, yeah. It's going to be more expensive, obviously. So the FX3 does have a mechanical shutter. It's $4,000 now. I think this used to be 3,000 something, at least in the United States. Man. Yeah. It's basically the same exact body design as the APS-C one. Either one would be generally fine. I mean, if you're very much into video compared to photo, they'll still function with both of them. I personally am fine using screens for photo instead of the EVF. I honestly don't use the EVF on my cameras that much. I'm just so used to holding the camera out. I do a lot of POV style videos. Let's see. So I'm very used to just holding the camera instead of putting it up to my face these days. Oops. Pull that up.
3 of the best foods for
There's an ad. Man, there's so many weird AI ads now on YouTube. So I use a GoPro here just to get like a decent view. Whoops. Jump to a point where camera matters. It's not ideal. Obviously, video quality of a GoPro is especially bad indoors. But yeah, it's kind of the stuff that I do lately. Just walk around, do photography at conventions, things like that. And this is a Nikon Z5. And yeah. So asking me about video might not be the best option. I'm okay with GoPro footage quality wise. I don't really do cinematic video stuff. So yeah, any of those cameras would be great. Oh, I'm not sure what the A version is. FX3A. So this is a revision of the original. More photo, yeah. Very true. My YouTube channel started as a photography channel, but then I was forced to get more into video to make videos. Oh, it's a new one. I'm not sure what they changed. Let's see. Changes. Make good photos. I tend to use some of the auto modes for simplicity's sake. So at a convention, for example, I'll use aperture priority so that I can just adjust the aperture. Generally, let the camera decide shutter speed and ISO, but a lot of the time I set minimum shutter speeds on the camera because I move around quickly and I'm asking the person in an outfit, a costume, it's called cosplay. For a photo, I don't want to waste their time, so I do it pretty quickly. So in those cases, aperture priority, minimum shutter speed. In my case, if I'm moving around quick, I'll use like 1/160th of a second on my specific setup so that there's no blur. Stabilization in the sensor is good, but it's not going to help you when you have a moving subject. So if you're taking photos of a person and you let your camera have a very low shutter speed, that's not going to be ideal, even with sensor-based stabilization, because that'll account for some of your own movement, but it's not going to account for the person moving around, right? So I would consider when you're taking a photo of a person to have a higher shutter speed usually. And you can just like do shutter priority or something like that if you need to. Focus modes and stuff. Face and eye detect is generally going to be fine, especially on a camera like this. So it's going to have a really good face and eye detect autofocus. Yeah. And then you'll on the Sony cameras, you'll most likely do continuous autofocus with face and eye detect. And you're just going to be like point and shoot because it's going to be pretty good for that type of thing. So Sony cameras are generally very good with face and eye detect. I'm trying to think of, depending on what style of photography, like I said, if it's just like photos of your family and stuff, maybe kids moving around quick, you'll want to do continuous autofocus with certain, yeah, it would probably be fine just using the standard face and eye detect focus modes. But there are other options to define where you want to focus. I'm trying to remember the name of Sony focus modes. I have an old A7S here, actually. So the Viltrex had sent me this lens a while back. It's a tiny little thing. But obviously this camera, the focus modes are not as good as recent Sony. It's still functional though. I've been using it as like a background camera for video, doing streams and stuff. And I just have it in manual focus. But I think it's called Flexi Spot when you want to set your focus point to different areas. Let's see, this takes a little while to start up. So this one has zone focus, which is like a smaller area of the sensor. Center, yeah, flexi spot, and then you have different sizes, and then you can move it around on the screen. The more recent Sonys will have a touch screen, so you'll probably just be able to tap on something and make it work as you need. If the face and eye detect doesn't work initially, you can just tap on the screen, and then it should hopefully track whatever subject you want to take a photo of. Yeah, I mean, that's fine if you want to get into the cinema line. It'll still be functional for pictures, and they look cool. But consider this is a very physically decent size camera. So if you're okay with the size, then it should be good. What's my POV setup? I do have some videos on that. I just use a GoPro 9 with the max lens mod on a backpack. So I've got actually I could pull it up. Switch to the other view. So this, whoops, just threw a. So this is the GoPro 9, and this is the max lens mod. This allows for the horizon correction on this specific model of GoPro. So if the camera's like this, it still has things orientated properly, which is nice. And then I generally have the door swapped on the GoPro, so it's got a instant access to the USB port, which is nice. And then I use this backpack usually. And it's got the Ulanzi quick release. And then I have a standard GoPro mount to the quick release plate. And then I have a cable coming from the backpack, and that connects to the GoPro, so it stays charged. And then there's a battery in the backpack. So that's pretty much it for the convention stuff. Nice little backpack. It's functional. Yeah, I had asked you why you want to sell the A6400. Because you have an Osmo Pocket 3. You wanted to buy a better camera. So the Osmo Pocket basically replaces the Sony for you. Okay, yeah. This is the most recent one. Yeah, those are really cool. I haven't personally used one, but I can see why that would be fun to use and convenient. It's a little pricey. So it's got the gimbal. I mean, for family stuff, this would be really fun to use, I'm sure. Do some vlogging. Really good for video. Nice. Yeah, those are cool. Yeah, I could see why this would basically replace the APS-C camera. Just like for whatever you want to do with it, video-wise. And the stabilization, I'm sure, on this is much, much better. And it's tinier, it's smaller, more convenient to use in situations where you don't want some big camera bothering people around and such. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, in that case, I would honestly probably try to go with a full frame option, considering you have that, and the A6400 is something you want to get rid of. So yeah, full frame probably is the route for you if you want to spend that much. It's pretty expensive. And if you're into Sony, there's only going to be so many options. They haven't done many camera releases lately, I don't think. Let's see. Whoops, there we go. A7 IV or ZV-E1. Yeah. Depends on if you want the more traditional photo focus camera. A1 $7,000, man. The ZV, that's an APS-C camera. Let me switch to full frame. Am I still on my... there we go. A9 III. The A7C2. This could be a potential option as well, but if you're more video focused, it probably does make sense to go with the ZV-E1 in comparison. Unless you want to use a EVF at some point, viewfinder. Yeah, this is probably a popular, just general use camera. It has the fully articulating screen, so for vlogging type video, it'd probably be okay as well. Yeah. So something like that, or the ZV-1. 7C2, oh, that's different colors. He said, yeah, that would not be something for you, really, that you would need to care about unless you really want the higher megapixel. There's a white version, there's a black version of the E1. Looks good. It's got the single card slot, and it's kind of what Sony does at this with this style of camera. Yeah, if you're okay with the one card slot and very video focused, this probably would be fine. It has the same sensor as the FX3, so it's a higher readout rate, which is good. 12 megapixel. I'm personally fine with 12 megapixel for photos, but at least consider that. Yeah, micro HDMI. Oh, overheating issue. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you're concerned or you live in a region that has really high temperatures, that's true. Might be a consideration for you with FX3 versus this thing. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, there really aren't too many options for you. Okay, there's the A7 IV. I live in Germany. Okay. Don't imagine it gets too warm there. Yeah. True. Yeah, this is the traditional style of camera. I'm in northern Illinois. And it's kind of in the middle of the United States, and we get a pretty big mix of temperatures. So we get snow, but we also get humid, hot stuff. I don't know the Celsius range of it. Let's see. But it could be somewhat similar depending on where you are in Germany. So imagine there's a bunch of mountains and stuff in Germany. Saying the best option, but I hate the crop. The FX30. This is a full frame camera. A7 IV. The only downside of the A7 IV for you is that the sensor readout speed isn't amazing. Hamburg. I could look up a map. Temperature range. Let's see. It says 0 degrees C to 24 C. And for the units I'm used to, 20 or 32 Fahrenheit to 70 something. Oh, yeah. Okay, those are minimums and maximums. Just looking at this random climate website. So it'd probably be in the middle of this one. Okay. Yeah, the temperatures in my area will go under this one here at times in the winter. But yeah, it depends, I guess, on the year. Okay. Oh, I get what you're saying. The 4K 60 with a crop. Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. That is a limitation if you're into using that format. But the readout speed, that's probably part of the reason why it has a crop in that mode, is that the readout speed of this sensor is not ideal for video. Yeah. So I'm going to look a little bit more on, unless you have any more things to talk about that. But before I end stream here, maybe half hour, I'm going to look at the recent releases of video stuff for Nikon and Canon. I wanted to talk about these ones a bit. I don't see the Canon one, oddly. Oh, I forgot about this camera too. The FX2. This has a higher resolution sensor in it. So 33 megapixels, which again, I don't think the readout rate of this sensor is great. So this might have the crop in 4K 60. Probably does. Yeah, so for in your case, I don't think this one would be a good option. I'd probably just go with the original FX3. So there is a Canon video release recently. This is very, very video focused. It's kind of on the cinema, the edge of cinema. See if it shows it in here. Nope. Can't even remember what the name of it was. I thought it was announced recently. I'm surprised they wouldn't show it on the main thing here. Maybe there's a different website for Canon cinema stuff. No, I don't think so. That one. Maybe in here. That's not it. Okay, it's C50. It's basically the same price as FX30, or I mean FX3, full frame one. Okay, here it is. So it's got a somewhat similar layout to the FX3. CF Express and SD card combo. I think Sony does a much better job with their card combinations on the FX3 and FX30. I like the combination of CF Express A, I think it's version A, and then the SD cards. I personally prefer basic standard SD cards when at all possible. So, man, that's a chunky camera. Yeah, this is basically like Canon's copy of the FX3 with the top handle. It's funny. Took them years. Let's look at the specifications. So obviously RF mount. One interesting thing about Canon's EF setup is that they have that adapter with the lens filters in it. That's kind of cool for people into that. So it's a 34 megapixel full frame. I don't know what the readout performance is on this thing. I'm pretty sure this does not have stabilization in the camera, but for video specific things, especially on the cinema level, it probably doesn't make sense to have sensor-based stabilization in it. Why does it say H.264 only? So for example, if someone wants to use one of these cameras attached to a car or something, or like a big gimbal on a car, sometimes the sensor-based stabilization can cause issues because it's just jittering around with all of the shaking and stuff. So with a camera like this, I saw people criticize it for no sensor-based stabilization, but I think it's designed for that purpose and to be in specific use cases where it makes sense not to have it, because they can stabilize it themselves with cinema level equipment. So I'm not really gonna complain to Canon about that. Yeah, it looks kind of cool. It's not anything in my wheelhouse or ability to access. I've never had one of the larger camera companies contact me about equipment at this point, so I don't think I would have to rent something like this, and my main YouTube channel is not very video focused. I do a lot of video stuff on occasion, but not really cinema level stuff, so it looks cool. I think it's nice that Canon's competing a little bit more with Sony on that level of video camera. And the price makes sense for what it is, even though it's lacking in some features. So maybe it'll drop in price eventually to compete more with Sony. We'll see. So that was that. I'm more excited to look at the Nikon one. I still use Nikon equipment. I did sell a bunch of it a while back, but whoops, go up here. This thing is interesting. This is much, much smaller, although it's still a decent sized camera because it's full frame. Video focused, it's the first combination of technology between their purchase or acquisition of Red, the cinema company, and their own equipment. So it's an interesting combination, but I don't think it makes a ton of sense with some of their design choices and things like that. I personally would definitely take a few of these if I could, but not at this point. It's pretty cool. It doesn't have a fan in it, which I think is a downside, depending. But the tests that I had seen, like Gerald Undone, his video, he didn't have any issues with overheating. Potato Jet did put it in his incubator thing at 104 Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what the Celsius is, sadly. But that did overheat when he had a set very high temperature. So it will overheat depending on the situation. So maybe in certain outdoors videography stuff, it'll not be ideal. It's a nice large LCD screen. A lot of the people that got access to this camera, in their videos, they were all saying positive things about this large screen, which, yeah, it looks good. I wouldn't say it's a replacement for their odd choice of HDMI port. They're using the micro, which I feel like Nikon was intending to release this thing as a vlog camera, but then it probably, like early on, they're going to design a vlog camera, and then they bought Red. So they decided to make it more of a cinema camera, but they still use this weird, like, ultra compact video camera design. And then you have that downside of the HDMI port. Brandon Washington, one of the other YouTubers that covered this camera, he does stuff with Red. He had mentioned anamorphic. It doesn't have built-in anamorphic de-squeeze support. So that kind of forces you to use an external monitor in those cases. That's a good point. And then you'll have to use the little HDMI port. I'm personally generally okay with it, but it is frustrating. For example, this camera I have here, this has a micro HDMI, and I've had some like little quirkiness with it. It's just a terrible connector. I don't like it, but it is functional. It's just irritating, usually, unless it breaks, and then it's bad. So that's a very, very odd choice by Nikon to do that. And then also another very odd choice of design is the battery area. I don't think there are any photos of it here, sadly. See if they have it on their own website. They usually don't show pictures of the battery door area, sadly. No. Product form, maybe? Nope. Maybe DP review. Okay, maybe they didn't even get one. It looks like they have it. Nope. Nope, no pictures. Anyways, the battery door is obviously on the bottom, but they have the memory cards down there. So that's a very odd design choice. And that's disappointing from a functional perspective, because if you're going to use any type of rigging equipment, so like a camera cage or even just a plate on the bottom of the camera, you're going to potentially have issues with swapping the battery, with swapping your memory cards. And for the micro SD, from the videos I had seen, you're going to have to take the battery out to change the micro SD card. So that does kind of make it more of just a backup memory thing for the camera, which is generally fine. Brandon Washington in his video mentioned he sees the micro SD card as more of just in case, always leave a card in there, because if you forget your CF Express card, you'll have that as a backup, and that makes sense. And also micro SD is very, very easy to get anywhere. You can just go to a random store in your area. You should be able to buy a micro SD card. So it's good that it has a secondary card option. And micro SD, I think, is okay. It's better than nothing type of thing. But the downside with this camera and all Nikon cameras at this point, you can't do video recording to both formats at the same time. So no instant backup in the camera, which is disappointing. I really don't understand why they've not implemented that functionality in their cameras, especially when it's a video focused camera. So hopefully they'll do that at some point. We'll see. A big positive of this camera, again, I feel like this is a vlogging camera, content creation camera, is the 32-bit internal float audio. So if you have your levels incorrect, depending, there's probably some leeway, both in the good and the bad, is if you don't set up your audio properly, you should be able to recover it with that higher recording rate, quality-wise. So that's good. Very nice. And I think this might be one of the first cameras, or the first camera, to have that internally available, which is cool. So that's a very nice addition. It has stabilization still, so they kept that in there. Very nice. Especially considering a lot of Nikon lenses don't have, I don't know what their naming is for stabilization in the lens. I'm trying to remember. Is it VR? I'm not sure. But it's good that they kept sensor stabilization on this camera. Because again, I feel like it's more of a vlogging camera than a cinema camera. Now, like I said, with the Canon C50, that doesn't have stabilization, but that's more of a cinema camera than a vlogging camera. So in this specific case, I think it's good that it has stabilization on the sensor, but it could be bad for certain use cases. Again, if it's going to be mounted to a car, the sensor-based stabilization could be a problem, depending on how it locks down, maybe depending on implementation. So could be bad, could be good. You'd have to actually test it to find out. I mean, it could work. It could have issues, depending. So in general, I'm trying to think of what other aspects of this camera I had seen that were odd or good. I would definitely take a few of these and use them. Autofocus in videos, probably decent. The Nikon cameras I have used, so the Z5 that I could still have, I had the Z30, but that overheated so much that I eventually got rid of it. So this is kind of like the Z30, but full frame and better in every aspect. And you should probably, at least indoors, you probably shouldn't have any issues with overheating on this thing. But we'll see once more tests come out. The general design is clean looking. I like the 3 buttons on the top. See if I can get a better picture of that. Here we go. Yeah, that's cool. So these are custom modes, I assume, but maybe it's like dual purpose. So if you wanted to do certain types of video modes, maybe you can push those to the those buttons and then quickly swap off to them. It does seem like somewhat of a minimal physical design, which isn't great, but it should be fine for most people. I like the toggle switch, photo video toggle switch. So as a hybrid, probably pretty decent. Things like that. I think there's a button on the front. Yeah. There's a button on the front. Again, very vlogger focused camera, it feels like. It's kind of designed for that, even though they want to call it a cinema camera. So, which is fine. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Putting those on the bottom is so odd to me on a camera like this. Very, very minimal buttons on the back. Again, you have the large screen, which is cool, but not much going on back here. It does have a dial on the front. I think it has one on the, I mean, not in the back, and I think it has one on the front too. Yeah. So 2 dials, that's nice. With Nikon cameras, they don't do the 3 dial setup like Canon does, usually. I'm not sure if the Z8, Z9, but on the Nikon cameras I've used, it's usually 2 dials. And then you use one of the buttons with a dial to adjust aperture ISO in combination. Yeah, I think it's great that they're getting more into video. And of course, it's got the red raw stuff. So, let's see if I can find a little bit better of a specification list. Can I zoom this in? Yeah, there we go. Let's see. 24 megapixel. So this is using the partially stacked sensor, I'm pretty sure. I'm kind of 2 minds with that sensor because you most likely lose quality at low ISO values, which is not ideal. And it kind of makes it more like a APS-C camera at low ISO. From what I've read, I could be wrong, but that's what I had seen at the time when I was looking at this stuff. So that's a downside. But the upside is obviously better readout performance. So you shouldn't really have any issues with rolling shutter and such with this camera, which is great, especially for a video camera. But that is a downside. I wish they could have put the Z9 sensor in here instead, but that's probably a very expensive sensor. Like Z8, Z9. Using the standard battery, which is great. I mean, it might not be great from like a functional perspective, but from the few tests that I had seen in videos, it was fine, like recording times. So having the ability to use batteries in multiple of the same line of cameras is great. It's really irritating to me when camera manufacturers use different batteries between their lines. Like Canon, for example, and Nikon does it as well with their cheaper cameras. They put a tinier battery. So if you do have a full frame in addition, you're going to have to deal with 2 different battery formats, and it's irritating. So nice to see that they're being consistent with this one, at least. Yeah, the micro SD. USB-C, great. The tiny little HDMI port. Just have the headphone, microphone jack. Yeah, so there's the 32-bit audio recording internally, which is great. So it's got the 2 different log profiles. It's a weird mix of the Nikon video functionality and the red There's the red log format, which is a special version for Nikon. So I don't know functionally how compatible or easy to deal with red cameras plus this will be. It's totally out of my wheelhouse of video stuff, but things to consider if you're into video at this level. It does have the dual base ISO sensor. Again, that's that partially stacked sensor. So if you're going to use it, you probably want to use it at these specific ISO ranges, values, I should say, depending on what you want to do. So if it's a darker situation, you'll use the 6400, or if it's a lighter situation, depending on your lens. 800 ISO is pretty high, even of itself. So that will have some downsides with aperture of your lens and such to use that high of an ISO value. Probably have to use indie filters, things like that, to deal with it. I don't know quality-wise how much of a drop it will be if you just use the lower ISO and not use the one of the specific ones. So again, I see this more as a vlogging camera for the most part, but it does give you that raw video functionality. And for example, Gerald, in his video, he shows there's a legitimate quality difference with using like H.265 encoding versus the raw formats or the log formats. I don't remember specifically which ones, but you will see a quality improvement, but you're also making humongous files. I do video a lot for YouTube, but I have very little, like the tiniest little bit of interest in raw video. It's cool, but it's such a impractical format, even if it's compressed. So the red video formats are compressed raw, and that's kind of why Nikon bought them, because they were fighting over using compressed raw video, like legally fighting. And that's cool, but it's still not going to be small files, even with compressed raw video. So it just feels grossly impractical for me to use any of that stuff. The funny thing is, a lot of my videos, I do like 1080p recorded in OBS and H.265 for the talking portions of videos sitting here. And then I have a hands-on setup that I use an Atmos Ninja 5 recorder for the hands-on, like trying on equipment or whatever and getting some close-ups and detail of a product. And I use H.265 8-bit 420 encoding with the codec pack of the Ninja 5 recorder. And I've just got a camera outputting HDMI. So I have, in that setup, I generally use the Sony ZVE 10. Yeah, ZVE 10, the original, which has some downsides in 4K, but I do use it at 4K 30 frames a second. So it's got a little bit of a crop on it, which is not ideal. And that camera has the micro HDMI port, which is irritating, but functional enough to work. Anyways, I do the smallest bit rate, lowest quality encoding at 4K with the Ninja 5 recorder. And for me, it's fine. It's functional. I don't do a ton of adjustment to my videos. And I mean, they don't look amazing, but they get the point across. And sure, I could record in ProRes on that Atmos Ninja 5 or whatever other formats are in there at higher bit rates and higher bit depths. So if I'm going to do 422 10-bit 4K, I could. But do I want to store massive video files just to get a little bit more of adjustment or quality of it? No. I do try to save all of my video projects, so that makes a legitimate difference for these big video files versus the more efficient ones that I use. And I'm running out of space for my video projects, so I don't know how long I'll be able to save my video projects for. So it gets expensive. There's like hidden costs to doing a ton of video work. I mean, for YouTube or whatever you want to do. So for example, if you do the raw formats here, let me see if it shows a actual storage use for that. Like how much time you can get per card. Oops, let me zoom out here. But I think one of the video creators, it might have been Gerald, he's mentioned, or maybe it was Potato Jet. He was saying like a 500 gigabyte CF Express card. They got like 50 minutes of raw video on a 500 gigabyte card. How much does a 500 gigabyte CF Express card cost? You have to consider that when you're buying a camera like this. It's probably grossly expensive. Well, that was actually, it's cheaper than I thought it would be. So a 500 gigabyte, oh, that's the Type A. It uses Type B. So $160, and it's out of stock. So if you want to do raw video on that camera in like a decent amount, and you have the storage on your computer to deal with humongous, like, again, that's just for 40 minutes or whatever it was, probably well under an hour of raw video. 500 gigabytes, $160. So if you care about backup and swapping cards and stuff, actually they have 2 terabyte. So if you wanted a 2 terabyte CF Express Type B, $510 for that card. So factor that into the price of the camera if you want to do raw video. That's a lot. So if the camera is $2,200, throw on another $500 at least. Yeah, it's cool, but it just feels like a niche thing, which is fine. I'm not saying it's bad. It's nice to have more features, but not something I personally would get into. Let's see, besides that, I generally like the design. It does have a zoom rocker thing on the top, and it kind of does have a PZ zoom lens. At least one. Whoops. Hit the print screen thing. So we've got a 28 to 135 f4 PZ, which is the motor zoom. So this would be a nice combination with that camera if you're into video stuff. It's good, it got a reasonable range to it, and then you can use that zoom rocker thing on the camera most likely to do nice smooth zooming. That's cool. Yeah, that's a neat looking lens. Okay, it's got it on the side as well. But I mean, it's not cheap. Almost $3,000. This would work as well, but that's a APS-C lens. I'm surprised that's the only 2 that they have. Well, anyways, I guess you could use the one very expensive lens to make use of it. But they might have like a digital zoom feature in here. I'm not sure. So maybe that would be useful for that if you're into digital zoom. Overall, it's good, and I could personally see myself using this camera. I'm not going to get one, but I'm glad that they made the effort. So, not bad. I just wish or hope in the future through firmware they can do recording to both card formats at the same time. Anyways, I think I'm going to head out. Interesting multi-stream attempt. I'll have to look at the video and see how it looks on YouTube. I'm actually, with YouTube, I'm streaming at 720p on both. But with YouTube, I'm using H.265 encoding versus 264 on Twitch. So, curious to see what it looks like. But yeah, I'm going to head out. Peace. See ya.